So when you began your journey, what's some advice you received that was completely wrong?
Um, so my career started very like uh, open-ended, let's say, whereas like graduated college and moved to California to like sort of like live the snowboard bum life for what was supposed to be a winter. But then I fell in the mix with like a group of guys, a group of creatives that were like, you know, cameras in hand all the time, like shooting snowboarding all the time, being in the sort of action sports culture all the time. And it was like intoxicating, you know what I mean? It's like, this is awesome. So I like, opened the first credit card and dropped way too much money on the first camera and your first MacBook Pro, you know what I mean? But it was like, cool, like I've invested in myself, like I'm all in, right? And so that was an awesome period of time. It was like 4 years where I just like learned a lot about myself, about, made plenty of mistakes when it comes to sort of like tech and storytelling and overshooting, undershooting on projects, right? Like, how much time it takes to edit and like tell a story and get feedback and involve clients, et cetera, right? But I'd say like the wrong piece of advice was like when I moved. So with that setup, it was like a lot of, like I dabbled in a lot of everything. Like I was producing, I was shooting, I was editing, I was, doing the sort of client relations to it all. So it was like very like sort of jack of all trades, let's say, right? But when I moved back to Massachusetts and I was trying to like learn the dynamics of the Boston ecosystem, this one producer was like, he's like, well, like we really look for, specialists with really depth of knowledge as like a DP or as, gaffer or as editor, et cetera. And so I wouldn't say it was like wrong advice, but it was wrong advice for me where it was like, yeah, so you should really just lean in on one of those paths and like just do that. And I'm like, again, it's not like wrong because there's obviously like I hire specialists, you know what I mean, to like do the work that is right for the role and for the project and for the opportunity. So like, but for me, it just that wasn't it because I'm like, but that's too like pigeonholed for what I love about this career path where it's like every day is different. Every day is a new challenge or opportunity to like tell a story on behalf of a person or a brand. And like, you need to understand the sort of like the full picture, you know what I mean? From like what it takes to like do the creative development and like start up a project and like, where are we really trying to go with this? What are the goals, et cetera, right? Through that final edit. So I feel very fortunate that like the early part of my career, I touched on all of it, so I could see that full picture, and I'm still like applying that today. Yeah,
100%. So you're saying it was wrong for you for people to tell you to be kind of like a one-trick pony and just sort of like double down on just one thing. You think it was best to just have that vast knowledge early on.
Correct. Yeah, and so like you kind of you get to be like dangerous, like knowledgeable and dangerous in like all the circumstances, but also like empathetic to the people who are doing that, whatever that specific role is, right? It's like because you may not be the expert in it anymore because that's why you've hired this person to do it. But like, because you've done it, you've had your feet in those shoes in the past, you can give better direction. You can get a better understanding of expectations and like time, right? And just like how long it really takes to produce whatever it is you're producing, right? So I think having that vantage point has been my advantage, right? Where I am today.
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, on that note, like getting to where you are now running Pennant, wonderful agency you have, what are some, I guess, like preconceived notions you had? Because you had mentioned before we start rolling, you're about to go on your 1-year anniversary, right?
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah. I guess maybe what are some preconceived notions you had in the beginning that maybe turned out to be false or inaccurate? Or along that, maybe some things that you had, some notions you had preconceived that turned out to be right, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly wasn't naive to what I was getting into. It's like this is gonna be challenging, you know. It's like like for those who don't know my stories, like I worked at an agency for 12 years and I was like very embedded in that place. So everything was very familiar. I was like the point person for much of the, sort of rich media work that we were doing with video and podcasts, et cetera. So I what was similar was the work. It's like, yeah, like we're able to tell incredible stories on behalf of like amazing, like known brands or unknown startups that are going to like change the world. So like that sort of fire and excitement is always the same. Like that's like not, that wasn't a surprise. I think the surprise was more in just like how many hats there are to wear all of the time. Like I knew there were hats, like there you got to do your operations hats and your finance hats and your people hats and your client relations and biz dev and et cetera. Right. So like those were not, like I wasn't naive to that because I was doing those at my previous shop, but it was just more, okay, now this is actually my responsibility from beginning to end on all of it in every decision in every way possible, right? And so that can be overwhelming at times, but I think I recognize that like this is what I signed up for, So like that it excites me as much as it is like can be overbearing in some ways. So I don't know if I answered your question that well, but like that's kind of the gist is like all of the hats are always there all of the time from a responsibility standpoint.
100%. Well, yeah, because no, that is a good point. I mean, that's something that I've learned too is, it's not just, the craft itself. I mean, even everything down to like bookkeeping.
Totally.
And were there maybe some things that you, because of all those like hats that you have to wear, were there some things that maybe you were surprised that you were either good at or you enjoyed? Like, for instance, whether it was like managing people or maybe like creating pitch decks, just hypothetical examples. Like, were there some things like that that you found like, oh, I'm actually good at this, or oh, I actually enjoy this? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if it's like very specific, but it's more my sense of focus where it's like, okay, like I know that there's these big pillars that need to be strong to like uphold this business. And so it's like encouraging myself and having the confidence to like keep focus on like specific pillars at specific times. So it's not like, cause you can't do everything all the time. It's like, it's not like beneficial to the business. It's not beneficial to yourself and your own sense of like stamina for it all. So like, for example, like we had goals to establish a better sense of our operations vantage point with like how asynchronous our team works, because like our team spread throughout the country. So it's like having this like home base of operations was something that we knew we needed to work towards when we started the brand. But when we started, it was like, we don't need this right now. So it's like, it's just sort of learning to like build for the now and setting yourself up for success in the future. So, the last few weeks we brought in an operations consultant to help us build the like home base of all of our operations and brand and just sort of communications and that transparency for the team to really like accelerate into year 2, So I think it's just like learning to focus in like small sprints whilst paying attention to that like marathon that we're all on here, right? So that's the jam.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Do you on that point, like, do you because we were talking a lot about this like before we went on. I mean, I see you've got, I think, like, at least from what I perceive, you have a very well balanced life. I mean, I see, you'll go on hiking trips, or you go to the beach.
Instagram versus reality, but yeah, go ahead.
This is also true. Do you because I mean, I'll spend time with like, people that are really like into the hustle and the grind, and I think you and I share a similar attitude, and it's like, we love what we do. We love creating. We love telling stories, creating like amazing content, and helping brands like build their brands or maintain their image, whatever it may be. But I think you and I too, there's other parts of life, there's hobbies, there's family, there's things like that are important to us. Like, I guess what I'm trying to say, like, is work-life balance a thing? Like, for entrepreneurs, like, some people will say, like, there's no such thing. But, like, what's your stance on that?
I mean, I always describe it as like a pendulum, right? Where it's like, it's always in motion between whatever work and life, right? And so there's this big swing. It's just like the sort of velocity of that swing is the thing that you're trying to control, right? It's always going to be swinging. Like you're going to be more involved in work, or more involved in life, or like you're missing one or want to spend more time in one than the other. So you're just trying to like regulate this pendulum to be like as close to center as possible, but it's like, it's never going to be center. So like, that's like, if you can embrace that and be like, you're, you know, like again, like using this operations thing as an example, it's like, I knew we were going to be introducing a bit of like chaos to the program, but it's going to be better in the long term. So it's like big swing into work, right? And now it's like, all right, well, let's level that back out and find a bit of balance. And so it's, for example, like this weekend, it was like, all right, I'm gonna do some gardening that I've been meaning to do at my house. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's like sort of silly as that sounds. It's like, well, just that couple hours of like hands in the earth, you're like not holding onto a phone or like doom scrolling or like getting all in your head about a project that's in front of you on Premiere or whatever, right? So it's like just that little detachment brings that pendulum from like full swing velocity to a little more in control, you know, and predictable.
Yeah, 100%. I like that that outlook, the idea of a pendulum, because I guess, yeah, like I was saying, sometimes there just isn't balance, and yeah, you'll never perfectly get it like center, that pendulum, but that's at least the goal, right? I guess
it's like the moments when it swings over the middle, like that's like perfect, right? And you're like, that moment, you're like, you have clarity, you've had like a win or whatever it is, right? And you're like, that's what's up, like, and that's what keeps you going for the next, like, how to get the next swing, like more towards center, you know?
Yeah,
which is cool.
Yeah. Do you have a method for maximizing productivity, like making sure, for instance, like, yeah, you're not just being busy, you're getting productive, you're actually getting things done, not just like maxing out on all your man hours, so to speak, right?
Totally. Yeah, a few small things I do are just like simple time blocking on my calendar, where it's like we're not going to have a business without sales. So like the first like 2 hours of my day are just as dedicated as humanly possible to business development stuff. So that can be a mix of, you know, following up on quotes that are already out the door, leveraging the work that we've recently completed to like share to existing clients or a new set of clients, right? Way too much time on LinkedIn, but that's like our best channel right now. So just like writing for that, being proactive in that to build community around, you know, myself and for Pennant holistically, newsletters, Instagram, you know, just like really being in that mindset of like hustle, even though it's not that, it's just like just being diligent to like generating leads, generating sales to keep the business up. But then I'll also set aside chunks of time for operations, where it's like, you know, tomorrow afternoon, for example, like we have 90 minutes blocked. Like we're just going to live in operations world for this period of time to like either tighten bolts on things or build new things to like assure that the base is strong of our operations, right? And similarly, like content, cool. Like we want to create content on behalf of Pennant that is valuable to our audiences. Like, what does that look like strategically, but also like quite literally, what is that content itself, and like building that in chunks of time. So that time blocking on the calendar is effective for productivity, but it's also good for my mental, where it's like, you know, because you can stress, be like, oh man, I really wanted to do this thing, or, you know, consider this piece of content, or whatever, work like fix this thing in our process. And if you don't have a dedicated time to do it, it just like, it sort of festers and it snowballs, and you're like, oh, I didn't get to it today. I'm frustrated with myself. Yeah. Am I going to get to do it tomorrow? Probably not. But so just like having those like blocks of time every month, it's like, cool, like we will address this, even if it's not like right this second. So it's like that peace of mind to assure that you're being productive, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Do you try as well, like dedicated like days of the week for like certain activities?
Yeah, days is tough because productions can kind of happen whenever. But I've always sort of like considered the Mondays, Fridays, those bookends, right? Where it's like typically Friday is like, all right, like invoicing, accounting, sort of all finance stuff holistically. But it's also that bucket of time for like the passion project that like just needs attention, but it's not the priority. So like if it's at the end of the week and you're just overwhelmed by some deliverable or getting a couple quotes out before the weekend or whatever, it's like cool. That can be punted and it's not the be all end all, So typically that, but yeah, otherwise it's like blocks of morning or afternoon, like dedicated to one part of the business in a very focused way.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you have I guess, like, have you figured out, like, what your focus peak is, if that? like
as far as the time of day?
Yeah, time of day where you're, like, you feel like you're most, like, productive. Like,
definitely in the morning. So it's, like, it's probably because of how caffeinated I am at the time. But so that's why I put the most focus in the morning towards biz dev and just, like, getting a strong base of cash flow, right? Because like that's what we need to assure the business is sustainable at the end of the day. And afternoons is usually more, again, sort of operations or content where it's like we don't have to be right or wrong in that moment. It's just sort of like building towards a stronger vision and future, right? And of course, what I haven't really talked about is client work, right? So like that obviously happens in the sprints that it needs to, but it's like, of course, editor is doing his or her thing, motion team's doing their thing. It's just sort of like, when do we come together as a team to review stuff or make decisions on boards and things like that? That's a bit more week to week ad hoc based on wherever state the project's in,
Right, yeah. And so remind me again, so you said you have a partner now. Is it like, what's the arrangement of like sort of like roles and operations, that leadership, that sort of thing, like tasks?
Sure, yep. So I have two business partners. They have their own production business. They do commercial advertising, union signatory. So it's Vagrants. They're based out of Boston, and they are excellent at like that top of the funnel brand awareness advertising play, right? So they work with the major advertising agencies of the world, right? So they are working on impressive advertising projects for like Alfa Romeo or like say Gordon Seafood. They lots of shoes and apparel and a lot of consumer facing work, right? So they are in that like all day, every day. But what I've really what I love and respect about the dynamic I have with those business partners is that like they have the same set of experiences and sort of like understanding of the nature of the work and the business, but we're not like in the thick of it together. So like we can have this like really good discourse around like where we're trying to go as partners, where we're trying to go with the business, like where opportunities lie within each other, you know what I mean? So it's like having that dynamic of a partnership is like hugely beneficial. Then as far as like day to day, like I'm EP, so I'm the one drumming up the work, working with clients, working with the team to jumpstart the creative, whatever it is we're doing. I have my creative director and writer. Then we have myriad editors, motion designers. They're just like excellent in what they do, and they're like specialized in either like a certain type of style or a certain type of like industry knowledge, or like the project is more interview based versus like written with VIA or whatever, right? So it's sort of that dynamic. But I realize I sort of glossed over what Pennant does. Is like we are middle of the funnel focused, right? So if Vagrants is brand awareness, we're helping brands in their marketing efforts and really their sales efforts too, help prospects that are, prospective clients that have like landed on their website, help them make an informed decision, ideally the decision for our clients, right? To make a sale. So we do it with motion design, we do it with production, and probably most importantly with strategy, right? Because it's like, someone says like, we want to make a video. It's like, oh my gosh, like that could be applied in like so many different ways. And like, so we help a lot of our clients direct a brand, help them understand like where this powerful medium of video can be the most like impactful for what they're trying to achieve from a goal standpoint, right? So that's what's exciting. And the day to day is like solving business problems with creative, you know, is what it's all about.
Yeah, tremendous, 100%. Is that like, I think it's like, it's one thing to create, like make amazing work, but then it's like creating like strategies for brands. And obviously, like, you know, you guys are, like you'd mentioned, you're working with like, you know, big high players here, whether it's like Alfa Romeo or whoever, but it's like, does that like, I kind of wondered like the knowledge of like strategy, like, do you think like you gained that knowledge like before, like pre-Pennant, when you were working through other production companies, or it was just kind of something where you're just like, you know what, I'm gonna have to like partner with somebody here. I don't know, I'm not like well no, because you had said like you handled the strategy side of things, so like, right?
Yeah, so strategy is a tough word, right? Because it's not tough, but it's kind of ambiguous. Like what do you mean by that, right? And so for us, it's like video marketing has like a very specific role and opportunity in the like greater ecosystem and dynamics of marketing overall, right? Where it's like a lot of the brands that we're working with everyone from the customer advocacy marketer, so they have like a very specific set of goals to like use voice of the client to build champions around their marketing efforts, right? Or we're working with product marketing managers where they have a new tool, a new product, a new solution that it needs to break into a market or like to just like needs the visual storytelling to support their greater initiatives with that product, right? And then of course, like marketing directors or CMOs, they have like grander brand challenges when it comes to their marketing. So like really understanding those like ICPs, but those like for us, but like those specific personas and their pain points, and like using video to help them have a ripple effect in their greater marketing, right? So it's really interesting when it comes to strategy, because like we're looking at it from our client's point of view as much as we can, but also their audience's point of view, which is who like really matters in a lot of this equation. Because like the things that we're creating aren't just for the brand; they're for the brand's prospective buyer to like help them make their decisions. So we're wearing I don't want to use the hat analogy again, but like we're treading a really interesting line as video marketers to like have empathy for our clients, but more importantly their customer, and like how do we tell the right story to help drive decision making, really.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. Yeah, does I guess like leaning into that, does when you, so yeah, it's been like a year now since you started this agency, and I'm just like so like happy and mesmerized for the success you've had along the way. Like, yeah, of course. Like, I guess because when we were talking like earlier, you know, it's like normally what I've seen is like people, they'll kind of like start up from the bottom. They'll sort of start their production and they'll make their mistakes like as like the company they were, or I shouldn't say mistakes, but you get the point. They make mistakes. Yeah. They learn along the way.
They've grown.
They've grown. Exactly. Yes. That's what I'm looking for. When do you think it was, like, how did you know, rather, was like right timing for you to like start your agency? Because I imagine you'd probably wanted to launch this for some time before you actually went out and made the jump. But, you know, the comfort of, you know, that paycheck, those benefits, right? Like, When did you know is the appropriate timing to make that jump, to take that risk?
As whatever, maybe cliche as it sounds, like I'm not sure there's ever the right time. You know what I mean? It's like it's to use the proverb of like, when's the best time to plant a tree?
Yeah.
20 years ago. So next time is like now. So
right.
I always sort of carry that mantra of like, it's not going to be an overnight success. It is about momentum sustained over time. So just sort of having that fortitude, right, mental or otherwise, right, to be like, yeah, like this is gonna be a long haul, right? So like once you can kind of adopt that confidence, to use your word, which is really what it is, it's like then you can just start, right? And I also don't think it's like you start by full blown like brand with logo and identity and like positioning and messaging and et cetera, like those are all very, very important things to like fully encompass a brand and a business. But that's really hard to do on day one because you haven't like learned enough about yourself. You don't know, you haven't gotten that sort of feedback from your buyer, right? Like you don't know what the market is demanding of you yet, right? So it's kind of like balancing that ambition and drive with like caution and allowing things to take the time that they need to take to like evolve in front of you, you know? So that's what's like really exciting right now is that like, okay, I'm a year in, learned a lot. I've got a lot of, projects and client relations and relationships rather, and feedback that like I can use to turn the volume up on year two, you know what I mean? So that's what's exciting right now. But as far as like taking the leap, you also don't have to like, I don't think I full leapt, you know what I mean? Because it's like I was exercising these skills all the time. I was like poking holes at what the business could and should look like based on my own sense of like intentions and focus and where I wanted to go in my own career, you know what I mean? So it's like you're kind of building on these things, some of which are very like aspirational or like intangible, but you're building on those in the background. And so like by the time you commit, it's like, I don't know, it's not quite as scary, right? And then of course it's like, it's really just financial at the end of the day. So it's just like, when do you have that runway to like take this, it's not like a risk on yourself, but like the right gamble on yourself, you know, and like carry that confidence through. So it's all like, it's amazing, you know, it's not without, I have more gray hair and bags under my eyes than I did a year ago, but it's like, it's awesome. I wouldn't have it any other way, you know? But it's also like, it doesn't have to be for everybody. You don't have to be an entrepreneur to be successful, you know? So it's just, to each their own, and that's completely fair.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Do you think, even like when you were working for this other company and, I guess maybe when you were freelancing, did you know all along that you were like full-blooded like entrepreneur, like you had that in you, or did you have to figure that out along the way?
Probably a mix of both. Like both my mom and my dad each owned their own businesses for 30 years and 40 years respectively. So like I grew up in a household that was very sort of fluid like that, whereas like there was of course like responsibility and accountability towards each of those things, but like they it's a lot of it's in hindsight, but it's like, I mean, they built a great upbringing for me and my brothers in what they built for themselves, and like they shaped the businesses around the life they wanted to have for their family and, you know, the family I grew up in. So it's very like, I've acknowledged that a lot over time, where they can make decisions in the moment that was beneficial to the life they wanted to live versus like a directive from somebody else, you know. That said, the agency I came from, like when I started, I was the first creative hire there, where it was like a public relations firm, so very, very different style of communication, right? And so, but they armed me with a DSLR camera and a plastic tripod, and they're like, we want to make brand videos. I'm like, all right, let's do this, And so it was very entrepreneurial out the jump, and like they'd have this sort of like surveys for, Boston Business Journal, like top places to work, right? And they'd always be like, what are the adjectives you'd use to describe the agency? And it's like entrepreneurial was the one I'd always use, because it was, I was kind of like sort of peerless in some ways, where it was like I was like helping forge the group and the way it the video played a part in supporting the greater agency and the brands that we were all serving together with communication, right? So that it's just sort of been what I've done my entire life. So like this isn't feeling very like new in that way, but it's equally as exciting, because now it's like mine. You know what I mean? Which is a big difference. So
right, yeah. So you got to observe like not only your parents running businesses and doing well with that, but you kind of observe their nature and sort of like how they make decisions, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so that's the thing that I try to apply now is like, all right, like my kids are 5 and 8, and like where do we want, sort of working in 5-year intervals. It's like, all right, my son's almost out of daycare, and so it's a different like sense of balance in our life to tackle in this next sort of 5-year period of elementary school. You know what I mean? So having that opportunity to like shape the business around my life is incredible. It's not without its challenges, don't get me wrong. Like late nights, early mornings abound, but it's what we're all sort of striving for, is that not to use balance again, but sort of like the enveloping of those two things, the combination of the two.
Right. Yeah. How do you, I can only imagine, because I don't have a family of my own yet, but like how do you like, I don't want to say juggle, but like making the time, like you said earlier, I imagine like blocking out on your calendar probably helps a lot, but like maybe like just separating, like, okay, I'm at home with my kids now. I'm not CEO Pennant anymore. I'm dad,
Yeah, exactly. It's funny you're asking right now, because they're on day 1 of summer vacation. So it's already like very different today than it was last week, but it's really looking ahead to the week, sort of planning out the week with your partner, right? And be like, all right, like where are our blind spots, right? Like where are the things that are going to be like more challenging, whether it's like, my daughter's dance, or like my son's soccer, or like the birthday party, or the whatever, right? Just sort of the milestones of that week, and like how do we ensure we have coverage, frankly. But then, I mean, obviously our parents, you're responsible for that, but it's like where can and should work be most focused on, you know what I mean? So again, it's like sort of taking the time to map out that week really assures you have the time blocking in the places you need to like focus on what's like most sort of crucial in that moment. So I think all of that, like, and I say this like it's like a big thing to do, and it's not. It's just like over dinner or whatever. Like, all right, like what do we got going on this week?
Yeah.
I think the thing that's harder is like the longer term, right? The longer term vision of like where you're trying to build towards, and like how can you establish different milestones along the way to like have the like deeper, harder conversation with your partner to like assure you're both aligned towards the greater goal you're trying to build for yourselves, right? Like that family that you're trying, like the family dynamic you're doing all this for, right? So that's a little harder, just like because you're so like tired or just like involved in the day to day and the week to week that suddenly like months go by and you're like, oh gosh, are we like making progress towards like the bigger goals we have for ourselves? So I'd say that's like the bigger challenge overall, is that bigger goal setting, keeping yourselves accountable.
Absolutely. Can you see it like in you mentioned your son like going through like daycare, like how old are your kids right now?
5 and 8, yeah.
5
so
and 8.
Penny is 8 and River is 5.
Gotcha. Can you like I don't know if it's too early to tell. Can you observe like any self-starting in them? Like maybe seeing
that's
them as
funny.
future entrepreneurs? Yeah.
Oh man. I like that question.
I'm curious because I'm
Yeah.
kind of like I'm a big fan of this sort of like concept of like, you know, I read Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell, right? Malcolm Gladwell, and it kind of seems like entrepreneurship is like there's a nature to it, like I said, but like there may be a hereditary component to
Interesting.
it. Maybe I'm wrong, but I like
Oh,
to think about that. Yeah.
oh, that's awesome. No, yeah,
Yeah.
I'd say. So Penny just had her report card last week, and it's like cool, you know, like doing great or has improved on math and reading and sort of all the general stuff, which is obviously what you want to look for in a parent is like, yeah, they're finding success in these skills, right? But like the last paragraph was more about like, you know, being a leader in the classroom and being empathetic to others and, you know, helping others and raising a hand, you know, sort of like these things that are like they're found in like teachable moments, but they're hard to like sort of like guide or enforce beyond, you know, as opposed to math. It's like this is black and white. It's either right or wrong. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So like having that type of report that she's like capable in all of those things, like that's reassuring that she's on a path to being just a good person, you know? And I think that is certainly related to entrepreneurship, where it's just like having that self-starter motivation, understanding of others, like compassion, passion, like all of that, right? So I think that's cool. So we'll see. Time will tell.
Dude, that's awesome, man. Well, dude, best of luck to her. Hope to see more growth for sure. I mean, I'm sure she will, but that's awesome. Yeah, I wonder sometimes, like, can that be that nature that we're describing? Can that be replicated or taught versus like it's either in you or not, and you got to like figure out on your own whether or not like running a business, being a self-starter, is that like, are you up for it or not, you know, in the moment, you know? But I don't know, because I think too, like, I never really thought of myself as a self-starter growing up. I mean, I guess I was, now that looking back, but I was not. I would describe myself as entrepreneurial. But I liked doing things on my own and creating. But in a lot of ways, I think I'm kind of a late bloomer too. So
You do.
Yeah. So
Interesting.
yeah, yeah. Like I didn't. I'm 29 now. I didn't start this video production business / freelancing career until the midst of COVID. So really in my mid 20s. I was 25. So before that, I would have never. I may have imagined it, but I didn't try to execute it properly or like set the goals. You know, do all these things that we're describing. You know, being on top of operations. So I wonder if it's like, can it be replicated in a way where you can show to somebody who maybe doesn't have it in them initially, or are you just sort of highlighting? It's like no, you actually do have this in you.
I mean, really, it all continues to go back to confidence, right? And just sort of like confidence in your abilities, of course, but confident in like how you posture and present yourself, and like confidence in how you communicate and convey an idea, or like instill, you know, inspire or that seed of imagination or of like opportunity and imagination, right? So like all of that, it takes time. I mean, like no one, I wouldn't say anybody's like born with that. Like that is, it takes time, it takes experiences, it takes plenty of mistakes, and that's growth, right? At the end of the day. And so first of all, you should give yourself a little more of a pat on the back. You're doing great. So like,
Thank you.
and I mean, you'll be probably pleasantly surprised, like year, 2 years from now, just like look back, you know. A couple of things that I've done for myself for my own sense of confidence is working with a coach. So like we meet virtually every other week or so, and I get to sort of like, I honestly feel bad for the guy because I feel like I just like word vomit for an hour, but it really just helps sort of like get the rat's nest a little more, like a linear line, and just reinstilling that confidence, and that gets you, propelled and keep that momentum going into the next thing. But for me, a lot of it is like celebrating the small wins, like some of them are like probably no one would really recognize except for you. And that's what's hard is you feel sort of alone, and it's like, well, like cool, like we won this little business, or like I got this show of gratitude from a client, or like we won this award or whatever. And it's like, it feels very like go me, but it's like, I don't know, that stuff's like, it's important because it just keeps the stoke alive and keeps you that momentum going into the next thing, whatever that is. And so I would encourage you to like like celebrate those small moments, like just be like getting ice cream or whatever, right? Like just these like little things certainly help, and like they sort of make tangible or make real things that are not inherently right. Like they kind of like, all right, like cool, I won this thing, I got this ice cream, like good for me, right?
Yeah.
And then you'll have a log of those over time, you know what I mean? Like, and so then you can look back and like, wow, look how far I've come in this last year. Like that is progress, right? And progress is what you're building towards always. And so you got to stop and reflect for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. It is something that I have been trying to remind myself lately, because I think my problem is I was maybe always a bit hard on myself, maybe like overachiever. I don't know if it's like environment growing up, and I don't mean to turn this podcast into my own therapy session, but
this is perfect. This is what we're here for.
But it's all interesting. It's got me thinking now, and it makes me realize, it's like when you go into running a business, you go into business for yourself. Like I didn't realize this, like getting into it, but there's like a lot more self work than you maybe initially think of. Like one day I'll just be like, find myself like journaling and thinking all these thoughts, and I'm like, this is work, like, but in a way it is, because
absolutely.
You're in the business of and for yourself, right? And improving that and fine-tuning it however you can to be a better leader, better communicator, better skilled at your role, whatever that may be. That's important to identify those things, and again, whether it's improving on or just reflecting on it, like you said, that's all important. Yeah.
Oh man, well said. Yes, it absolutely is. The other thing is like, maybe it sounds contrived or whatever, but it's like finding your mentors and being a mentor for others is like so helpful, because you're aspiring up, and then also seeing how far you've come when you're supporting somebody else, and it's like really impactful for everybody, right? So it's like, so if you could find that kid coming out of college or whatever, and is like, full deer in the headlights, like doesn't know where to begin. Like you can provide so much like insight and guidance to that person over a simple like virtual call or like a coffee. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like all of that is really impactful, and then that is it reflects back to you to be like, oh yeah, like I've come so far, like I've achieved these things that I'm not giving myself enough credit for, because like I was this kid whatever 10 years ago, right? So just those little acts really go a long way.
Absolutely. And it's like, if you're not giving yourself that self-love, even those celebrations of small wins like you're talking about, it's like, how do you expect to invite more good things to happen in your life, right? If you're just constantly hard on yourself, oh, I didn't do this, I didn't complete that task that I wanted, you're not never really allowing good things to happen spontaneously and on their own, right?
Yeah, it's that inner critic, right? Like like working with the coach, it's like that inner critic, it is impossible to ignore that person.
Yeah.
But and there's probably like, I forget what the ratio is, but like 2% validation in what they're saying. Like, yeah, they're what they're saying is not true, but it's such a small percentage of the big picture that it's just sort of like, yeah, listen to that inner critic, and then I hear you, and then like put them aside, right? And then like on to like what's really important or actionable or like gonna make progress towards that goal. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it's just like I'm also kind of seeing like, and again, I don't want to like make this about me and figure like I'm not at all coming from like I'm the wise person here. I mean, you've definitely, I think, got more savvy. You're more savvy on that end, but I am kind of realizing though, as I'm getting older, approaching my 30s, I'm just seeing as like, when that inner voice pops up, and it used to beat me like all through my 20s. I'm thinking now it's like time is so fleeting. Life is so fleeting. I'm like, should I really give that inner critic voice in me like that much time of like however finite time I have left on this planet,
Yeah, I mean the answer is no, right? But like again, he, she, they, it will always be will always be there. But yeah, it's just again, I just sort of find the like, yeah, I hear you, I hear what you're saying, but I disagree.
Yeah.
And I like move on, right? And some days are better than others. Don't get me wrong. Like last week, I had a couple like annoying L's that were just like, oh, what the hell, right? And then I don't know. You just like this too shall pass, and that's why we're in this field, right? Is that like creative is constantly evolving. Like it's an opportunity around every corner, right? And so that like always keeps you motivated. It's just like placating that inner critic to be like, I hear you, but just go sit over there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It'll be all right.
Yeah. What do you think your inner critic is mostly fueled by? If there is like a particular trait or flaw, what have you, like some motivator?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm not alone. Like in the creative world, that you're like, you want that gratification of positive feedback from whoever, right? So you're always sort of like, there's a constant hunger for that validation, So I think it's like when there's a lull in validation, which is usually because like the cycles of the work you're doing, like you're not like delivering so much all the time. It's like that's like kind of impossible. So like the peaks and valleys of delivering on a project or executing on a production or winning that piece of work, right, is like it's in those gaps that inner critic builds a little strength, So It's just sort of being like, it's cool. Like we're gonna make this next turn, and it's gonna be awesome again. We're gonna get that validation again, and we're gonna keep going. You know what I mean? So I know where my inner critic like sort of sits in the shadows, like ready to like, oh, like
Yeah.
I'm back. But so you just gotta recognize it. It'll go away again.
Yeah, right. Well, it goes back to that famous quote. I wish I had it in front of me. I don't know who said it on the top of my head, and I'm paraphrasing it, but it's like, he who cannot conquer himself can't like win the battle, or something like he who doesn't win the battle against themselves.
I know. I can't remember it either, but yeah, the sentiment is still salient. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Are there like, just veering off, are there like certain philosophies or things you like, practices, or I don't know if your coach has like brought any of those to your attention, things that like you've recently been trying to replicate in your life?
Yeah, I mean, certainly the celebrating the small wins, because like this is like such a like small incremental steps towards progress type of game, right? So It's just like continuing to self-validate and reflect and assure you're celebrating those successes. Takes a snowflake into a snowball, you know what I mean? So just keep doing that. Looking back, I think that's very clear for me right now, because it's, we're a year in. So we have a lot of like actual data and actual feedback and actual clients under our belt and actual projects done and a awards made and achieved and things like that, right? So just sort of taking that period of time and letting that inform where we go next, and sort of having this base of success to build off of, like, that is very motivating in this moment. But I think it's just a lot of it's in that saying no to things that aren't right for us, and also just pausing, just like, playing hooky, which is funny because you're the business owner. We're like playing hooky to go on a hike with some creative friends, right? So it's just like you're still like silly, but like as you're hiking, you're like walking the talk because you're like still talking about work and sort of like finding sort of shared experiences with those people. But it's like you're not in front of the computer or behind the camera. Like, yeah, you have your phone on you because you gotta take the photos. But that subtle detachment goes a long way. It's like this analogy, I forget who came up with it, of like sharpening the saw, right? Where it's like just keep sawing. Eventually, that saw is gonna be dull, but you're just like, no, I just gotta keep going. It's like, well, if you just paused and sharpen that saw, then you'll be like better for it. So I give myself a bit of grace to do that too, especially when it's like when we're full on. So when we're not, it's like, okay, like just sharpen the saw for a second,
Yeah, it's an I love that analogy because you're making me think too. I think Abraham Lincoln actually had a quote where he was like, give me 6 hours to cut down a tree, I'll spend the first 4 sharpening the axe.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
This idea of kind of like working smarter, not harder.
Correct.
And beyond that, just to the point too, I think, playing hooky, I think that is so important. I mean, and it's like you're not doing it necessarily because it's like, well, it is like my day off. I've done all these other things. It's like, no, it shouldn't reflect what you've done or how much you've done in the week. It's like you do it because you care about yourself. You're nurturing this human that is you to, again, spend time with family, be there as it was Penny, right, that's going through daycare or
like I volunteered at her school's field day, you know what I mean? And it's like that was so cool to just like be a kid for a little bit, or like like take the time to play, because like when do you really do that anymore, right? So like that little bit of perspective was really helpful leading into what then was like a very busy next week, So yeah, you gotta do right by yourself and like take the time to do those things. I think it's just hard when you're like, yeah, but the work. So I get it.
right, yeah. Well, and imagine too if you're constantly fixated on that. I feel like other people, like other parents volunteering at field day, are kind of like, yeah, well, I'm working too. I mean, it's like even if they're maybe not running a business, like, yeah, well, I'm working hard too, but I'm also here, right?
Yeah. Totally. Yeah, and I think it's that's when you feel most fortunate as a business owner. Is you don't have to like justify taking that time, what I mean? So it's it's really cool.
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah. Do you it's like another point I was thinking about is like and I guess this kind of ties in with what we're talking about is the identity as like an artist or CEO or business owner. Like, and I guess like initially when I brought up this point, I was kind of thinking of like the two identities conflicting with each other, like being creative versus being the business owner. But now it's like we bring up this other aspect of family. It's like being a dad. I guess it's like not that they can't complement each other, but how do you keep them well balanced? Like again, with like that pendulum of it's like, okay, I'm creative. I'm gonna get very artistic here in this project, but I gotta make sure the money's coming in, and I also gotta make sure I'm there for field day or whatever, things
Totally.
like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, time, right? It all boils down to time, and there's only so much of it. So I think you got to, first of all, give yourself credit and grace to like you are doing great, like doing the best you can with what's in front of you. You're making decisions in real time based on myriad factors, and like just keep going, right? And so that's where like that sort of look back or reflection or like analysis of where you've come is very important, because you are assuring yourself of like those actions in the moment are right, that you're like you are doing right by all those things. So confidence is super key. Sometimes it comes at the sacrifice of sleep, but I'm a big fan of sleep. So I really try to schedule that in. And then a lot of it's just distractions, right? It's like the phone that's in your hand is like so easy to just go down a doom scroll or whatever. So I think it's just being really like diligent and like do right by yourself to like put that thing away when you can, like to be fair, my wife reminds me, be like, hey, like it's dinner time. Like, did you like put the phone away? So it's not without its reminders, but doing that, like maybe don't watch every blockbuster movie or like every TV show that's on HBO. You know what I mean? It's just kind of like pick your battles there, because all you have is time. And so it's just like, I think that is where the pendulum sort of finds itself a bit more balanced, when you like get rid of as many distractions as you can. And then planning ahead, forecasting the pitfalls or the moments of chaos, and like how do you overcome that preemptively, right? Fortunately, we're producers, so we're usually pretty good at forecasting like this part's going to be challenging, and that sort of helps with your mental to like get over whatever that challenge is. So as far as like identity, I mean, I don't know, does anyone have a really good sense of their like full self? You know what I'm saying? Because it's like it's you're always changing, and your perspectives evolve, and I think it's totally okay to like change yourself, right? So it's like reinvent yourself, I guess, is a better term, right? So I think just giving yourself the grace and the time and the space to reinvent yourself is important. So
absolutely. I like the concept of reinvention, and I think like, let alone like businesses, you've seen that. Trying to think of some like examples, but like there's plenty of things that were supposed to start as something, and they like evolve into something else, whether it was Venmo or Amazon, good example. It was just initially like a used bookseller, and now it's the number one, arguably the only, online sort of marketplace out there. I guess like this idea of like I think a lot about like hustle culture, and I think maybe that's after spending too much time on Instagram, that sort of a narrative has gotten into my head a lot, and still kind of creeps into my subconscious of being hard on myself, because on the surface level it can be a good motivator, but I think underlying it can be quite toxic and quite self-damaging over time. And going against all these things we're talking about, giving yourself the time, giving yourself those celebrating those small wins, and giving yourself the time to reflect, and just in general, like, being smart about running a business. It's not just like all about like, the hustle. Do you ever find like the hustle culture thing, like, did that ever kind of like work its way into you and kind of like, I guess, like creep into your psyche, so to speak?
I mean, it's hard to ignore. I don't know. Life is so short that it's like, like you put, I guess I've traded hustle for focus, right? Where it's like, it's really, focus has more impact than just like having this hustle, that hustle, all sort of competing for time at the end of the day, right? So, but I mean, I buy into certain aspects of it, of like, if you can start your day an hour or two earlier than everybody else, and you can focus within that time, you're gonna be ahead. You know what I mean? But like, you're never going to like win this game. You know what I mean? Like you're you're constantly competing because you're constantly evolving, because the world is constantly changing, and like you cannot possibly hustle into infinity. Like it is just like not sustainable. So I think like this intersection of being true to yourself, focus, that intention behind it all, to keep that pendulum from like swinging so drastically is like where you quote unquote win at life. And it's like, but it's all in your perspective at the end of the day. So that's the challenge with hustle culture and Instagram, et cetera, is that like, it's not reality. You know what I mean? Like it is a perception or perspective of somebody's individual reality shared to masses, but it's not like outright true. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I think that's the thing you gotta sort of acknowledge and, again, just like reflect on where you've come from. This is your experience. But I think for me, it's like having like a network is like the best, strongest thing in this career, because like those creative collaborators or you know, old coworkers or peers or clients are like they evolve too, and like you want to stay in touch with them so that you can all raise each other up and be successful in the ways that you all like can and should together, right? Because you have this sort of shared history, right? So it's like therefore trust and a relationship. So like that is really the best thing, and it's just tough when like networking and like doom scrolling kind of go hand in hand when it comes to social media. So it's just like recognizing again where you can put that focus and time into the merits of things that are trustworthy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I didn't really think of that. It's like now that we've entered into the sphere of social media, it's like, the doom scrolling, as you put it, does kind of mesh in now with networking, where it's like whether you're just sending a cold DM to somebody and then you start seeing their work and what they're doing. It's like, oh God, why am I not doing this?
Totally. Yeah. You know? I mean, so, you know, it's just tough, right? It's like, but there's a lot of power in unfollowing, you know, if you just find yourself like sort of spiraling internally of like whatever it is, resentment or like jealousy or whatever word that is happening in front of you because of a square on your screen. It's like so easy, just like unfollow, and it's like not as much of a problem. It's always going to be there, right? But I mean, it's like the network is what's got me to this point in my career. It's like taking care and silly as it is, like being kind and like being empathetic to others. Like those things really come around to like build up your dreams and vision, right? So I think it's like putting in that energy towards the people and the opportunities that are going to come back around are really the name of the game, you know? That's networking.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think this whole idea of like, in order to be successful, you need to like, you know, lie, cheat, steal, and like, you know, try and like outsmart or out strengthen, you know, people around you. It's so not true. And I think that's something that like people who, you know, I maybe grew up with maybe tried to like tell me, but of course, what do they know about business? They weren't entrepreneurs. And it's such like, you will go like, so, I mean, you're an example of this. I've seen like other leaders, other entrepreneurs I look up to that, you know, they're very powerful at networking, connecting with people, you know, inspiring others, asking questions. I think that I've learned it's such an underrated component of success, is that, you know, I mean, at the end of the day, we're a social species. We do depend and rely on each other. And of course, for example, you've got Vagrants, you know, you guys rely and depend on each other, and it's a win-win. You get amazing deals with wonderful, reputable brands out there, and you're creating amazing work. You're You're contributing to their success, and in turn, you're getting success out of it. So that's huge. It's tremendous. Is really the power of having that strong network. Yeah.
Yeah, well said. And I think it's we're very like we're saying blanketed statements here, but like the actionable things are like very simple. Like raise everybody up, right? Like hit them with that positive comment, right? Or like if someone needs a share or a connection, and you have that, like just make it happen. You know what I mean? Right. Like it's really not difficult to send an intro email with two people that you guys should get to know each other. And it's like those little moments come back around because eventually you need that connection. Yeah. Right. So it's just like the more comfortable you get in raising others up, making connections for other people, it does come around to you too. So it's just building in the habit, I guess, of doing that.
Yeah.
Is really important.
Absolutely. 100%. I like another point you said too that I just remembered was about perspective and knowing like what's important to you. And again, bring back hustle culture. I think that's another thing that you even, I think you said this, that it's constantly trying to tell you like you need more, you need this, you need that. And then alongside that, they're showing, trips to Dubai and, like swimming in these like massive like rooftop pools and whatnot and having chiseled abs because they've invested in like 3, trainers or whatever. Yeah, and it's just like, well, what's important to you? Like what are your values? What's important? Like I was actually, last night I was watching that movie War Dogs. You ever seen that movie?
Yeah.
Jonah Hill and Miles Teller. Thank you. Todd Phillips movie. And give a brief overview of the movie. I'm spoiling it, but whatever. It's been out for like 8 years.
Yeah, you're probably not gonna.
Yeah, but Miles Teller's character, he's like, Jonah Hill brings him on. He had just been like a struggling massage therapist, and he's like, we're going to make tons of money, selling these like third-hand firearms in Albania to the government and making millions of dollars. And through all the headaches and, getting held at gunpoint by Bradley Cooper, his turning point, he comes back home to his wife. He's like, I think I'm done with this. Are you cool if I just go back to massage therapy? Because he realized family was ultimately most important. And anyway, aside from that tangent, I think it's something that's very also freeing of knowing kind of like what you truly want out of life. Cause it's like, I think it makes it easier to know when you can, like you say, play hooky or take those hiking trips or be around your family.
No. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, yes to everything you said. I think it's just hard when you're like, you're in school for first 20 some odd years of your life, and it's like, all right, now you gotta take all of this book knowledge and apply it to like the business world or whatever, and you have to live it. And so like, there's that 10,000 hours analogy, right? It's like you gotta put those hours in to become like an expert in whatever that is. So I think if you're early in your career, it's like be motivated, build momentum, but like respect that it takes time. It's like be kind to yourself. To like it's gonna be okay. You just gotta keep going and do the things that are as true to you as possible. I think sometimes you definitely gotta step out of your comfort zone and do things that scare you, because that's how you grow, right? And like it's gonna be fine. You just gotta keep going, and that's hard when you're in the day to day of like, especially the creative world, where it's just it changes all the time. And so if you can embrace that mental sort of fortitude, like it's okay to change and to reinvent, and just like that is progress inherent, right? So yeah,
I love that. That's so powerful, Tim. What do you see for the future of Pennant, as well as for your own life, for your own brand, so to speak?
Yeah. It's funny, that balance, right, of like having my own personal, I don't like saying like personal brand, because I don't think that's like, it's kind of a weird term, but just saying, not saying things, but producing insights or value based on the experiences that I've had that can be helpful to others, like that's really powerful. So I respect that a lot, and so I want to do more of that, but it can't be all that I do because I have to build a brand and build a business, right? That I want to see very successful, so that I can have the things in life that I surround myself with my family and my friends and the activities we like to do. You know what I mean? So it's all like very awesome. It just like, year one, honeymoon period's over. So now it's like, really testing ourselves. So it's awesome. It's exciting. We, just more of the same, just like building towards the vision that we want. You know what I mean? So with that comes like saying no to some things, like being very direct and clear in other ways. So yeah, just further, farther, faster, I guess.
I love that. That's so amazing. I love that. All of that. I guess ending with some things on hiking. We're both into that. Yeah. Any future, like mountains destinations?
Oh,
like
hell
that
yeah.
you got on your
So
bucket list?
I got one for you. So we were
Yeah.
supposed to do Katahdin, which is the tallest peak in Maine. A couple of weeks ago, we had a campsite all reserved, and it's a haul to get up there. It's like 5 hours or something from the North Shore of Mass, and so it's like full commit. But like, so we're supposed to go up on a Friday, and I call the Baxter State Park on the Tuesday, and they're like, "Yeah, we're not going to be open yet because it's too early and the rain or whatever." So I had to punt it, but I just secured the same site in October. So that'll be like the big peak for the year.
Nice.
But no, I actually next weekend I'm taking my kids and my wife. We're doing one of the Appalachian high mountain huts. So there's like in the White Mountains, there's 8 high mountain huts. So they're just like these really cool huts with bunks and a kitchen, and like there's a crew that works out of there in the summer, well, year round, but like in the summer, and they cook you your dinner and breakfast. But yeah, so it's just like this destination, like this cabin, super remote in the White Mountains in New Hampshire. So I've done all of them except for this one. So this like it's gonna be a cool like full circle moment where I'll complete all of the like the checkbox of like all the huts. But then my kids, this will be their first hut. So just kind of this like cool full circle that I'm excited for. But yeah.
That's awesome. That sounds so much fun.
Yeah, what about you?
Yeah. Well, I got I feel like I
You got the
several
marathon
times
coming up, yeah.
Yeah, I feel bad. I've like plugged that like so many times already on this podcast, but I guess it's worth mentioning. But yeah, that's actually in Idaho, and
It's awesome.
Thank you.
I've been to Boise. Yeah.
You have?
Yeah.
How is it? How do you like
Awesome.
it? Oh,
Yeah, it's so cool.
that's great. I hear it's like a hidden gem.
It is.
It's like
big time.
Yeah, especially now. It's a lot of people from like California in particular. Have
Yeah,
kind
it's
of,
like a
moved out
tech
there.
like hotbed suddenly.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're gonna have a good time.
I'm excited for that. Yeah. Other than that, I mean, there's tons of places I could say I'd love to like check out. Definitely. I mean, I would never get tired of the White Mountains, like as you said, and I should definitely look into that 8 hut thing you were describing.
They're so fun.
Sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're in a good spot too. You're in your North Shore. You're relatively driving distance, not too bad from that. So
yeah, no big deal. Yeah, it's more like the kids were too little to do any of that, and now they're capable of carrying a backpack on their own. So that's going to be
nice.
I feel like the next kind of like 5-10 years here are going to be full of adventure like that.
I love that. Would you try and get it to like Colorado? I could see you like enjoying mountains out there.
Yeah, so my roommate from college lives outside. I think he's in Boulder right now. Yeah, I've been to Colorado probably, I don't know, 6-10 times. Like,
oh wow.
Yeah, a lot of snowboarding. And then my old agency had an office in Denver, so I'd get out there every once in a while. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
That one's yeah. You should get out there too.
I've been to Colorado once. I'd like to do more like actual like experiences like that though. Do you have like of all places in the country or the world like as like a number one you'd like to visit that you haven't yet?
Visit. Oh man.
Whether it's like hike or whatnot. Yeah.
I've got too many answers. No, Scandinavia has been on the list for a while. So like, I really want to see the fjords in Norway, and my wife really wants to see the aurora under like these like glass dome yurts that you can like stay in, which would be super cool. So yeah, trying to work towards that, but then also want to get to Alaska because I've been to like most of the states, but not Alaska. So that one feels like a trip we could do with the kids, like reasonably simple enough for a big trip. So yeah, I'd say those are probably like the two bigger things we're working towards.
Nice. That's awesome, man. Yeah, I'm sure those will be amazing trips, and hopefully you can put that on the radar soon. Yeah.
Well, as you said, you just commit to it on the calendar. And
That's true.
Then you're like,
That's
cool.
true.
Now we're doing it. So yeah, we're sort of making our 2025 plans.
Good.
Soonish. So yeah.
Good. Tim, thank you so much for coming on, man. You are extremely wise. Not only an amazing creative CEO, but for real. I love hearing all this wisdom that you've been sharing, from everything from just the idea of balance and, family, working smarter, not harder, and having these good like self-talks. I think this is very valuable and very important for people, especially like young and aspiring creatives and entrepreneurs to hear. I think people get a lot of value out of this. So I really appreciate you coming on, giving your time, and we'll have to do one of these again for sure.
Dude, I'm in. Thanks for the invite.
Awesome.
Appreciate it.
Awesome,
Thanks,
Tim. Thank you, Tim. Appreciate it.